Hey out there, survivors, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Survive Interviews. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by an incredibly talented actor who is also part of the Outlaw gang in Red Dead Redemption 2. And that is Stephen Gevedon. I hope I didn't butcher it too bad that time. Gevedon. There we go, Gevedon. We're going to be talking a little bit about his roles in TV, movies, and Red Dead Redemption 2. So, Stephen, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Yeah, great to be here. I appreciate it. I checked out, when Stephen Palmer reached out and sent me, or you sent me the links. I think either way, I checked out, what you've been doing, and it's a really nice little thing you got going here. It seems like you'd mentioned it was casual and. It certainly has that feel. It's just what these things I think can be, which is nice little conversations without any great drama. People aren't yelling at each other.
Yes, exactly. And I think, especially during lockdown, there's a time to just have people come on and talk about the things we all love.
Yeah, sure.
Because we could all do a little bit of escapism and stuff. So, but yes, Stephen, some of the stuff, when Steve Palmer reached out to me and said, I think you should speak to Stephen, who he said was, of course, Josiah Trelawny. I was like, that's cool. But then I did my usual IMDb check, and one of the first things that I came across looking at it was Oz.
Prisoner number 97R518, Scott Ross. Convicted June 4th, 97. Possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. Third conviction. Sentence, life without parole. 3 strikes, sucker!
Which, me and my wife, when we started dating back, 17 years ago, we were obsessed. We bought all the DVD box sets of Oz. We watched it nonstop. And I think, just to point out here, the character you played, Scott Ross in Oz, was a big, he was pretty much the kind of antagonist of the first season, and sent ripples throughout the show for 2-3 seasons afterwards.
Yes. Interestingly, I don't know if it was you. My wife just Googled me because my daughter was asking about something, and Oz came up in this. Somebody had written, so it was a Red Dead Redemption fan had written, "Oh my God, can you believe that this guy was Scott Ross?" Blows my mind, that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's just interesting that you'd bring it up as well. So there seems to be something in the ether about that particular role, because I haven't gotten a lot of people asking me about it. It's been a while. It's been since 98, I guess, is when it came out. Well, that was interesting because that was the first season, and I hadn't. It was, I just went on an audition, and for this part of this biker guy, which I didn't think I did particularly well in, partly because, it's just, sometimes it's been my experience that it doesn't really matter what the actor thinks about the audition. I mean, I've thought I've done great, and I thought I've done, just blew the whole thing, and sometimes you get the part and sometimes you don't, and it really there's no rhyme or reason to it. But I just didn't feel a connection to the role at all, which apparently also doesn't count for anything, but in terms of getting the thing. But yeah, so I did the audition, and they brought me back to meet with the director and the producer, who turned out to be Tom Fontana. And it's hard, the older you get and the more you're in the business, as you well know. I mean, you've been in the gaming business for a while, and it's hard to maintain a sort of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed naivete about it all. you know.
Yep.
One way, though, to do that is to actively not learn stuff, you know, so, or pay attention to the nitty gritty. So, like, I had no idea who Tom Fontana was. I knew I liked, what was it at the time? I guess he'd done Homicide.
Yeah.
I knew his work, but I didn't connect the name to the work. So that, I think, worked out quite well for me, because I met with him and the people when I came back to meet them again, and I still kind of thought, well, this is just kind of, I'm not a biker. What am I doing here? This but goofy, and who are these people anyway? All right, whatever. We'll just play around, you know.
Yeah.
And that can really work to your advantage, not having the pressure of, oh my God, this is Tom Fontana, and
yes,
his body of work, sitting immediately next to him, lording over your minuscule body of work, Anyway, so anyway, that's how that came about. But once we were doing it, also, and it was the first season, so I came in the middle.
Yeah,
they hadn't aired anything yet, and nobody had been talking about it because there was nothing around to talk about.
Yeah.
But in terms of the shooting of it, was great. We shot it that first season. I think they moved after that out to New Jersey, but they shot it in downtown New York City in what was the old Nabisco factory, which is now, I don't know, have you been to New York, Manhattan?
No. Funny story is I have now been to the US. I hadn't been to the US until January. That was my first time ever going, and I went to Kansas City.
Oh, well, I've never been actually to Kansas City, but apparently it's nice.
It was for a film festival. I was having my US premiere of my second feature film there.
Oh, great! What was that? What's that?
It's called The Perished. It's a horror movie.
Great.
I've got some questions for you about horror movies in a while as well.
Sure. We'll talk about that. But yeah, so there's this abandoned factory, the old Nabisco factory down in the meatpacking district. Now it's all, like, Google just bought it, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just all high end sort of office spaces and stuff.
Gentrifying kind of thing, yeah.
Yes, very much so. But when we moved in, they just gutted it, and the production was the top floor of this factory. So everything was up there, almost everything. At least, certainly, the prison was. So anyway, and it was kind of great. I was living in Manhattan at the time, so easy commute, and it was also great. Was Tom Fontana had his offices there. And he was writing this stuff, he was the executive producer, writer. And if you had a problem with something, like, not so much with the dialogue person, but rather with what we're trying to get at, the writing, that was one of those instances where it's, somebody, people say the hardest job that an actor has is to take bad writing and make it believable.
Yep.
I don't think that's true, actually. I think with bad writing, it's, the jig is up and anything goes. There's no responsibility to anything here because this is just terrible. But and let's just have some fun, Whereas if it's good writing, if it's like what Tom Fontana does, or most recently what I did with David Simon with The Deuce, who got his career, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, writing for Homicide, Fontana. David did.
All coming full circle.
Yes, nice. But when you have words that are, it's like, look, I'm a writer. It's not easy to put words together.
I completely agree.
And somebody thinks, I'm sure, that I write like crap.
It doesn't. I'm sure there are people out there that look at Aaron Sorkin and don't think he's good, and the dude is revered. And he's
So let's not talk about people. Let's just talk about Shakespeare. We can agree that Shakespeare did a pretty good job with writing. You know, and Chekhov, not a slouch. But when you have words like that, and you know, I'm not trying to overstate the case here, but when you do have well-written material like Tom Fontana generates, you don't want to screw it up.
Yeah, there's a bigger responsibility.
I think there is. I think it's important to get out of the way of the words. There is no thought before the line or after the line. The line is the thought, which is a way to say be in the moment, right?
Yep, stay in the present.
Exactly right, which is helpful just in life, but
in life, exactly. It's actually I've started to, because of everything that's been going on, I've gone back to therapy, and one of the things that the therapist is trying to help me with quite a lot is not to be thinking into the future, not because he says time traveling exhausts you, so thinking in the future and living in the past can both drain you. Just live in the present, live in the moment.
It's funny because I've been doing a lot of meditation, which is just. That's all it's about is
being in the present. Yeah.
It's not some like, I remember there was this great line years ago about enlightened people. I can't remember where I read it, but you know, the line was, I think it came from Joseph Campbell, but it was, you know, enlightened people don't forget their zip code. You know, it's not like some thing where all of a sudden you're off the planet, you know, and all you're interested is in flowy robes and beads and shit, you know.
That's a great saying. That is a fantastic saying.
And enlightenment, you know, and then it gets really sort of heady, whereas enlightenment isn't really even a goal. It is what you already are. It's the process. It's all that stuff, which is why I think actors and artists in general, if they do veer towards some sort of organized religious thought, it tends to be towards the mystery traditions of the East that speak to these, because, you know, like an acting class, it's all about being in the moment, don't be results oriented, blah blah blah, which by the way I don't agree with, but I think you should definitely be results oriented if you're an actor, you know? Because especially if you only have, you know, 10 more minutes to get this take, you know, we can't have 8 people figuring out their mantras. You know what I mean?
I totally get you.
But that said, but there's a, you know, obviously a balance there. But anyway, so that's kind of how the Fontana thing came about, and the Oz thing came about.
And I think one thing that you know, Fontana did with Oz really, really well, definitely the casting director maybe in particular, is that I remember when me and my wife Kathy, when we first started watching Oz, the thing about it was, what they did with Oz was they made characters feel like they weren't just straight up stereotypes of what Hollywood portrayed those types of characters as, and instead, like, the guy who is a skinhead looks like he could be a teacher, or, you know, like, you know, people just looked real and believable, which is the truth of it, you know.
I agree. I think you know, and again, that kind of goes back to the casting director actually is she's responsible for me being in a number of really great Alexa Fogel. Yeah, she was responsible for putting me in Oz. She was responsible for casting me in Show Me a Hero, which was also this David Simon thing that he put together with his team that did The Wire. And then she was also responsible for putting me in Deuce with David. So I think she's a great casting director that can spot talent just like that. But no, I mean, you're right. I mean, that cast was very. You're absolutely right. It's like Schillinger's role. J.K. Simmons he very easily be your history teacher. You know?
But then, and as I say, in reality, you don't know what anybody's like behind closed doors. So like you can never go off of, appearances or first impressions.
Well, that's the whole. Yeah, that's the basis. That's the crux of the whole serial killer thing, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, but like even earlier, I was thinking back on like. I remember like the first interaction I think in the show that Scott Ross has with Schillinger is like it's so you think they're maybe gonna like fight or kill each other, and then they're best buds, and it's so unexpected. But it's just funny because like I think Oz, it came along. It was maybe right at the start of that. I suppose it was HBO, so they kind of were the originators of that like TV that's as good as movies.
It's interesting you bring that up. I was just talking about this with a friend. I'm pretty sure. So Oz came out, I believe, in fall, like September, October of '98, and I think Sopranos was the next year. In '99, it was their first season. And Edie Falco, who was in Oz, who I had a lot to do with, was in both those shows. And if I'm not mistaken, that tagline HBO had, it's not TV, it's HBO.
Yeah.
Was originated with Oz, and that was, But interestingly, I mean, Tom Fontana very much was a part of him and David Milch with NYPD Blue and Dick Wolf with Law and Order a few years earlier. I think the look of Law and Order and the real sort of throwaway nature of that entire show, that in terms of the look, the handheld thing. Which
it felt very real. Another show that me and my wife used to watch a lot was when we first started dating was Arrested Development, and there's a great moment in that where the reason that Michael Cera's character is afraid of prisons is because he thought he was watching The Wizard of Oz, but he was actually watching Oz.
In fact, he'd been terrified of the very notion of prison since, as a young boy, he accidentally watched HBO's Oz, mistaking it for the classic Judy Garland musical.
I just thought that was fantastic. This little 8-year-old kid watching this TV.
That's hilarious. That would be traumatizing. Although I'll tell you, man, the first time I saw The Wizard of Oz, I was probably like 7.
Yeah, it's pretty traumatic as well.
It scared the shit out of me.
There's some scary shit in that movie.
Those flying monkeys?
Yeah.
I mean, I had nightmares.
The witch.
Yes, the witch is terrible. It's not really a kid's movie. You know what I mean?
Definitely not. It's dark. Like, people don't give it enough credit for how dark it really is.
Yeah, and I've never read the book. That was, which is supposed to be even more
horrifying.
Horrifying, or it's on par with books like Brave New World and 1984, and
surreal, stuff. Like real surrealist stuff. But yeah, I mean, again, talking about the cast, and I was like, we were just talking. You got to work, like you worked with J.K. Simmons, you worked with Lee Turgis and Dean Winters.
Yes,
and he's fantastic as well. Like
I didn't know Dean, know him, but I knew of him because of the film scene. Yeah, the movie business scene. But he and I had a couple of really good, thing. I think it was like towards the where we're trying to figure out what's going on.
Yes, he calls you into his cell, and you guys have this interaction about like what's going down and be ready for it. And I remember that. I remember that quite vividly. Yeah.
There was that, and then like I said, obviously J.K. and I had some dealings. Terry Kinney also is in that. He's great.
Yes, he was the warden, right?
Was he the warden? Yes, he was the warden.
Yeah,
that's right. So we had at least one thing to do together. And again, he's one of those guys that I had auditioned for. Actually, he was directing with the Steppenwolf company that he is, I think, a founding member of. I remember they were going to do a version of, speaking of Brave New World, they were going to do a version of A Clockwork Orange.
Oh, wow.
And so I'd met with him, so it's like, it was kind of nice. And then B.D. Wong, who was in it, who is this great, came out of the musical theater. I think he just done or was doing Charlie Brown on Broadway.
Oh, wow.
And he was also in Oz. It's just, I love that juxtaposition.
Same. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and he was just a really sweet guy. That was the other thing about that show. At least maybe I was just ignorant, but I thought everybody was really nice to me. Maybe, I was having a great time. And because we were all on this one floor, where they had holding and lunch. I don't think we went to another floor for lunch. So it was all right there. There was nowhere to go. Like, if you're on a set.
You were just in Emerald City, like.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah,
Emerald City was everything, yeah.
Yeah, and funnily enough, so JK and I had the same dressing room, which ironically was considerably more uncomfortable to hang out in than the actual prison, because the actual prison set, they had air conditioned.
Oh no! Yeah. I thought you just meant because of JK, because of his character in the show.
Oh no! No. JK was great. I haven't spoken to any of these guys. Well, I saw Dean a few years ago, but I haven't seen JK in a while. Look at his career. What a great success.
Like Oscar winning.
Yeah, fantastic.
Like
and deservedly
phenomenal.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just great. But anyway, but we had the same dressing room, which was literally smaller or about the size of the cells that we were, in the set, except the cells were new and nice and air conditioned, and the dressing room was like these.
It was an actual prison cell.
Yeah, it was like, Jesus Christ, this is worse than being in. So, like, if you had time and they weren't messing with the set and you had some time to kill, you would just hang out in the prison set because it was considerably cooler. And we shot that in the summer, so and it was the top floor of this factory, so we were kind of like a toaster oven up there. So.
Yeah, because the heat rises and but like it's crazy though, as you say. Like, what I was trying to get a minute ago as well though is that, like, I feel that Oz was right at the cusp of that. Like, as you said, you had Oz, then you had Sopranos, and then I feel like the next big jump was probably The Wire for that kind of cinematic storytelling, or gritty cinematic storytelling in TV.
What I've noticed, there was a show, well, you see that on Netflix all the time. There's a series of 8 shows. Some are half an hour, some are 45 minutes, some are a full hour. No one cares anymore. It's just,
yeah, exactly.
This is going to be it's very liberating and great. In fact, I'm developing a TV show with a producer friend of mine for anyone who'll give us the money for it, to be honest. But
I feel that
no kidding, right? But that's just the nature of the beast, I guess. What did Orson Welles say? It's no way to live your life. 99% hustling, 1% making movies, or something like that.
Yeah, and he's not wrong.
No.
I mean,
right. Anyways. Yeah, go ahead.
I started, just to give you a little bit of context from my stuff, I started making films back in 2015 with my friends, just going out at weekends, shooting chunks of a feature film. We made it for our first feature. We made for $5,000. The DOP had all the best of equipment, so that was great. I wrote it and directed it, and it was all our mates just playing characters that were caricatures of themselves. And we never expected anything to come of it. We just made it for fun because we wanted to, and people getting experience in their different fields. And then, it got a release and it went around the world festivals and it did all right, and it won a load of best stunt awards, which I find hilarious because there was no stunts, there was just lads actually hurting themselves. So it looked very real.
It looked so real.
Yeah.
That's a great stunt, man. Yeah.
So, but we never, and then we were all kind of liberated by that oh wow, this is maybe something we could do. And then as you said about the kind of naivete and the kind of wide-eyed thing at the beginning of stuff, now kind of 5-6 years in, I'm getting to that point of realizing that to then make the next level or the step up movie is so much harder, because just trying to get that funding, trying to get that foot in the door is so difficult.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, it's the thing about the film business. I mean, it's the interesting thing about making movies. And like I said, I came at it from a production standpoint, not with any goal to become an actor. I just had nothing better to do. In like around this time, actually, late September of 1990, I had my first gig in the film business. I was doing returns as a production assistant, doing stylist returns for the stylist on, because you know, on these music videos, a stylist will rent a bunch of stuff or borrow stuff from stores, and then they have to get returned. And so I was doing those returns for the Simply Irresistible Robert Palmer music video. That was my first. Okay. Yeah. And so coming at it from the production side, it's great to do what you did. I mean, I say when people ask me, I just don't go to film school. It's just an extraordinary. I mean, if you have $150,000 lying around, make 3 movies.
Exactly.
You know? And because it's and I'm going to say this, and somebody's going to get pissed off, but it's just not that hard. You know, I mean, it really isn't. It's lifting stuff. It's moving stuff from that place to that place. It's pointing, and especially these days where
everyone's got a camera in their pocket. Yeah.
Well, exactly. I mean, back in 1990, you did actually have to know something about f-stops and lighting and film and exposure and all that sort of. And you didn't really see, you know, what was going to wind up on the film on the screen. You know. Well, nowadays,
you had to trust that the director or DOP saw it through that little viewfinder. Everyone else kind of didn't have a clue.
Exactly, right. And I'm not saying that's better or worse, although I do think it's not as helpful as people think it is to be able to see what they're shooting. I think they get... Yeah. Go ahead. What?
No, I kind of understand what you mean. I mean, also on top of that, having so much storage and not worrying about... like, oh yeah, we'll just do another take. Yeah, we'll just do another take. Yeah, we'll just do another take. Yeah. I think you hear these stories of when people made films on short ends, you know, of reel, whole films stitched together on these little short ends, and they were like, we got to get this done quick because we only have X amount of film.
I've made, I'd say, all through the 90s, every independent film I did was some part of it, or if not all of it, was shot on short ends.
I've heard that story so much from like friends of mine that I look up to in this industry. A guy named Joe Lynch from New York. He's a filmmaker that I like. He's a bit of a mentor to me, and like he came up in the 90s doing trauma films. Yeah, and Joe was like, Lloyd Kaufman would just send him out to get short ends anywhere he could and come back for whatever they were shooting. It was just the way it was done.
Yeah, I had that job as well on a production. My job was to run and get short ends every 3 days at this one company whose apparently, as the company, was sort of a low, sort of a second tier film rental slash what's the word? Company that services these smaller films, you know. Okay. So like you could get a grip package for half the price that it would be at the regular, you know. And it wasn't a very good grip package, but you know, there it was. But yeah, stuff like grip packages. You don't even need a grip package these days, really. Yeah. And so when as an actor, it depends. There's a good and bad to everything, but there's certainly something to be said for knowing you've got 2 shots at this.
Yes.
And that can be debilitating, right? If you're in your head as a director or as an actor or a DP, that's going to be. But it gets done. And then on the other hand, saying, okay, well, we can do this until the sun comes up, literally. Well, the problem with that, and I do think this is a problem, that directors, everybody just fixes it in post now, or thinks they can.
That is the saying I cannot handle more than anything is fix it in post. It hurts me at my core. I can't. I don't like that being said on my sets at all. If that gets said, I get upset.
Yeah, it's sort of kind of what happened to rock and roll in the late 80s and now really, but it's with the digitization of everything, right? And non-destructive editing. You can technically fix it in post, but that shouldn't be part of the palette. That should really mean what it says. It should, there is a problem here. We, fucked up. We need to fix something. Yeah. Let's not think about it now. And just
move on,
we'll fix it in post. My buddy and I, Brad Anderson, we're making session 9.
Oh wow, cool! Right there we go.
Yeah. So we're out there shooting it, and there's Brendan Sexton is in it, and Josh Lucas, right? And now Josh is about my age, maybe he's like a few years younger, but Brendan is, I think, a good 10, 15 years younger than I am. So he's, anyway, we're shooting the picture, and we've got again, it was one of these sort of scenarios where, not unlike in Oz, we were all stuck together. It was one set. We all stayed in the same hotel down the road. So we were together a lot, and it was a lot of fun. That was a very, everybody was cool, and like all the actors hung out, and every night we'd be at the bar just shooting the shit.
Visually, it has because it's meant to be kind of like, it's that creepy, dark asylum. It almost had a almost nearly found footage level feel at times, because it was like, that was kind of the nature of that film. I felt was like to make you, again, going back to the grittiness of it, it felt like that handheld footage, shaky a little bit. But again, you're in a very scary mental asylum. You're meant to feel that discomfort.
Yeah, I mean, well, there were a couple of things going on there. One, Uta Briezewitz, who's the DP on that, who very much so created the look and the feel of The Wire. She was the DP on that for the first 3 seasons, I think.
Wow.
And then now she's become a director in her own right, which is great. In fact, she directed me in an episode of The Deuce.
Full circle again.
She was great, and that camera was the first digital Sony camera at the time. In fact, that actual camera that we used to shoot had just been flown in from Francis Ford Coppola's farm up in upstate, in California, because he was dicking around with it because he wanted to play around with it, because Lucas was shooting Phantom Menace on the same camera. There were 2 of them, and Lucas was shooting Phantom Menace, and we shot Session 9. And I will say, we beat George Lucas to the theaters.
For the first film with that camera.
Yeah, well, the first high-definition film ever in the United States, if not in the world, was Session 9. And theaters.
But
I know.
I think it's.
But anyway, but what I'm saying is the look of it had a lot to do with what Uta was doing with the camera that I didn't particularly understand, and she was just kind of winging it as well, because the guys that came along with the camera from Sony, they were sort of like tech guys. They didn't know much about film. They knew a lot about the camera. But I remember Uta would ask them questions, can it do this and can it do that? And they'd be like, I don't know. Find out,
Try it, yeah.
Yeah, and so she did, and that she created that look very much on the fly, winging it. And then, of course, like you said, we got an interesting note back about a week into production from LA praising and heralding the what do you call them? The set designers.
Oh yeah. Oh, I think I've heard this story.
Yeah, and it was like there is no set.
There was no set designers. It was just Denver's mental asylum. It had all the stuff there.
Again, I don't want to piss off some set designer on that, because they were lovely people and they did do a lot of work,
dressing and
but they didn't other than the room, the isolation with all the pictures, they did a lot of work in that. But they did a lot of work finding, like, the room that my character is in
with the tapes.
Yeah, that was a room that existed when Brad and I had broken in there and looked around. There was they were urban spelunking, is what it's called, apparently. No, I'm serious.
Really?
It's a thing.
I used to do a lot of that around the kind of big haunted establishments around here. I used to do a lot of urban spelunking.
No. There was a group. They were online. They had a website, and they take pictures of where they spelunked and stuff. At any rate, so there was this room of tape recorders and boxes and files and tapes that we'd seen when we had sort of checked the place out. And then the set designers recreated that room, and as part of the facility where it was safe, So I don't want to imply that there wasn't any creative art direction and or set design. However, a lot of the picture was just point the camera that way and turn it on.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it was like shooting in a studio. It was like shooting on a Universal lot, because we were all there for the entire run of the picture. We never left, really. We left one day to shoot some street stuff in the town. But in terms of it was a studio picture, though. It was USA Films.
One thing that I find interesting about what you've just said there is, I made a movie in December. Again, I just went out. I decided that I wasn't getting funding for the bigger pictures I was trying to get made. So I decided, well, let's go back to basics then, guys. The Perished had been my biggest budget film at 25 grand. It was a lot more. That was all just me and the three other producers pooling our money together to make it. There was no outside investment. And The Perished has been picked up by a distributor, sales agent in the US, and is getting released. It's got a cinema release in Taiwan, I believe, later this month, which is so bizarre to me. But
that's great.
Thank you very much. In December, I just decided to go out and make a found footage movie in my old family home, out in the middle of nowhere. It was an old mansion from like the 1600s. We lived there when I was a kid, and it's all fell to rack and ruin and dilapidated, and it's just horrific. And so I went up there with my kids and my wife one day, and then I was like, I gotta make something here, kind of like what you're saying. And like that, on that movie, we just moved some stuff around. We didn't have to dress it. We didn't have to. And people, one of the festival directors that I sent it to said, oh my God, the set design was fantastic. And again, like you said, I was like, there wasn't any really, like, it was just turn up and shoot and get the actors to land it with the performances. Right.
Yeah, it's Well, if you're lucky like that, why, the happy accidents that occur are, again, I might wind up quoting Orson Welles a lot, because I've been on a little Orson. Yeah, I've been on an Orson Welles jag for about 6 years. I've seen.
You've obviously seen the unfinished movie and stuff. Then the one that.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And all the documentaries on him. But he has, Bogdanovich. Well, he has. Wells has this quote that says, that a director is simply someone who presides over happy accidents.
I think that again is a phenomenal quote and very accurate.
Really? No, but it's the truth. I think ultimately none of it matters. To be results oriented to completely turn around what we were talking about earlier is, if it's a good movie, it's a good movie, and I don't particularly care how it got to where it is, Because
to be fair, because to be fair, you can have something that's great on paper and ends up terrible by the end, or you can have something that's terrible on paper and ends up great by the end, because it's never a straight line. You can have something that's terrible on paper and terrible in the end.
Yeah,
yes, that's true. That's the third outcome.
or it can be great on paper and great in the end. There is no rhyme or reason,
True.
And that applies to everything. It applies to the acting as well. I stopped going to rushes. I did a short film in the summer of '92. So I decided that I was going to give acting a shot. I'd been in the film business about 2 years, and all of a sudden, this friend of mine who I'd been hanging out with, and in our friend group, he was in the film business. He was a PA as well, and associate producing here and there, and in New York. All of a sudden, I announced that I'm going to be giving acting a shot, and he says to me, "Hey, do you want to be the lead in my short film?" Like, you've got a short film? You're a director? You've written a short film? All right. So sure. So we go off and do the short film, and this was in 1992, so everything was on film, 16 millimeter. We go up to the woods and shoot on a lake. It's a very artsy movie where forget it. It doesn't matter what it's about, but it's artsy, and it's two guys on a boat in a lake. Anyway, so we shoot the whole thing for a week, and then we come back and look at the rushes. So we go. He says, "Hey, do you want to come see the thing?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I sit down and I watch it, and I had a panic attack, and I had to just leave. Honestly, my entire body flushed, either the blood drained out of my head or up into whatever the hell happened. It wasn't very good. It wasn't pleasant. And yes. What I'd realized was that every time I thought I'd been doing something pretty good in front of the camera, I was just awful. It was just awful. And every time I felt lost, and I didn't know what I was doing in the scene, I was like, "Oh, that's
good. That's the stuff that's landing, yeah."
Or that's interesting, anyway. Yeah. If not good and bad or value judgments, so I try to stay away from them. Privately, I'm more than happy to shit all over some band, but who needs that?
Exactly.
What good is it for me?
I don't like putting negativity out into the world about stuff. I've said this forever. It's what I hated about being a reviewer.
But that's right. That's why I've never reviewed anything. It's unless I can do a critique.
Yeah,
that's one thing.
I always say this to people: being critical and critiquing are two completely different things, and it's in the modern age. It's something that gets confused all too much, in my opinion.
Well, it was confused in the 1830s. It was confused. Period. It's like
the internet has just allowed it to happen a lot more widely, I think.
Oh shit! Yeah, everybody's got an opinion, and everybody has an opinion. Very few of them are well thought out, and even less of those have any sort of what's the word I'm looking for? A pedigree. Yeah. One of the worst things that happened, and I read this a while back, and I would agree with it, along with the cluster fuck of bad mistakes newspapers made. One of them in terms of like trying to stay relevant and alive. One of them was they fired all of their movie critics. Now, that's what people buy the newspaper for, right?
Yeah.
They used to buy the newspaper for the funnies, for the weather, and for the movie page. And then if they read the article about the FBI doing some lousy stuff, then okay. But the movie critic was somebody you could rely on, and you didn't have to agree with them. I mean,
that's what I was just going to say. And so often you get people who, if they have a movie critic that they like or that they look up to, and then they disagree on one thing, then they're suddenly like, oh, that guy's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's like, just because you disliked one of their opinions does not mean you can invalidate everything else that they've said.
Or yes, well, there's that. There's that. And then there's also, if you know the guy or the woman or girl or whatever, like there was a movie critic on the local news here in New York City when I was a kid, when I was, in elementary school. He hated being a movie critic. He hated it because he wanted to be a theater critic. And he was a theater critic, but you could tell that they were making him do movie reviews because nobody was going to the theater. They were making him play to his audience. Either way, he hated everything, like everything. There was never, I don't recall as a kid ever seeing this guy review something and saying it was good, it was fun, you should go see it. It was always like, well, this wasn't terrible. That was about as great a review as you were going to get. Yeah. But the great thing about that is you knew.
Consistency.
Well, you knew what his taste was. And, if you know a critic, you don't have to agree with him. You can know, okay, well, he doesn't like that. That means I'll probably like that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And vice versa, It's not like just because if somebody likes, I don't know, whatever, movie X, and talks about it and tells you why they liked it, and none of those things are appealing to you, well, if that person doesn't like a movie, you're probably going to like that.
Exactly.
It's just consistency.
Something that I've seen going to horror festivals is, I've been going to horror festivals for like 5 years now with my movies. And one thing I've noticed is I've met critics at these festivals that say, oh, I hate horror movies. And I'm like, you're at a horror festival. And they're like, yeah, I'm assigned to be here. I don't want to be. So straight away, I know if I read their review, like you just said, that I'm probably, like, if they rail on a horror movie, I'm probably going to be like, well, that guy doesn't like horror movies, so I'll probably still like it.
Well, right. And exactly. Right. And it's also like when Session 9 didn't do well at all in the theaters, but that was for a number of different reasons.
I remember that, yeah.
But the reviews were middling. It was sort of like a 6.5 to 7, And I read a bunch of them. I don't know if I read all of them, but I read like the big, the New York Post, the Times, the Wall Street Journal. What I noticed was, if you don't like the movie, I don't care. I mean, I'd like you to like it because it's just makes it nicer for everybody, for you, for me, but if you don't like the picture and you have a valid reason for not liking it, like some of the reviews I thought were, the negative ones, they weren't negative. They were, Variety was the only thing that was negative, I think, if I remember correctly. Yeah. But they were sort of middling, and they had their issues with it. And frankly, the issues they had were valid. Okay, if you don't like that sort of thing, you're not going to like this. You're not going to
enjoy this. Yeah, exactly.
And that's fine. When they would review stuff and they just missed the point, like for example, like I remember, I got to. Do you remember a picture called? It was that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis, and it was
True Lies.
Thank you. There you go.
There we go, yeah.
I remember getting into an argument with like some independent film friends of mine in the city over beers, and the criticism that they had of the movie was that it had no character development. It's True Lies.
It's James Cameron Arnie, like
it's Arnold Schwarzenegger and
as James Bond.
Yeah, I mean, it's like complaining about that same year. A great movie, I loved it anyway, called Raise the Red Lantern came out. It's a Chinese film takes place in like the 1850s China. It's about courtesans, and it's just a great movie, beautiful film, and highly recommended. Saw it in the movie theaters. Within the same 6 to 8 months, I saw True Lies. And complaining about True Lies' character development is like complaining that there were no explosions in this 1860,
in this Chinese period picture, yeah,
about courtesans and the slow death of the Chinese, royal class. You went to see the wrong movie. No?
Yeah, exactly.
But again, it's about like consistency, which is like, it's the same thing with like Yelp reviews. Somebody hates this restaurant. How do I know this person has ever been to a restaurant before?
Or that they, exactly.
Kind?
But like again, food is so sensitive. Like literally, two people can pick up the same thing, eat it, and have a completely different experience. So it's impossible to put like an arbitrary score on something like that.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
I wanted to quickly talk though about your music because I've checked it out and I really enjoyed it. I can tell you right off the bat that there was a couple of songs that really stood out to me, but I can tell you my personal favorite from the songs that I've listened to. Preacher is my personal favorite.
Yeah. People like that one. Yeah,
I really like Preacher.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. I've been, again, like I said earlier, I've been writing songs. I think I wrote my first song was probably 14. And noodling around on the guitar since I was 10 or 11. My dad had a guitar. A lot of those songs on that album are recorded on my father's guitar that
oh wow,
he had he bequeathed to me at some point in the 80s or 90s. But and there's a band. I have a band. Unfortunately, COVID happened, so I feel that. Yeah, we were going to record an album with the band, and then I sent these tracks, what you hear on this album, to the guitar player to maybe get together and just me and him record in a sort of COVID safe kind of way.
Yeah. And
his point was, you should just release these songs the way they are. So
I think he was right. I think he was right, because I think they're great. I mean, another one that I really like, just to give you, as I said, there was a couple that really stood out to me, but When I Die was another one that I really, really latched to.
That's funny. There's that one, like I said, I'm a little on the social media on Instagram. And one of the fans of Red Dead, actually, a few months ago, there was that pick a song for every day of the month thing going on Instagram. And this one fan who, I'm sorry, escapes me at the moment, the name, because they all have like their tags aren't their names. It's
exactly. So it's hard to remember. Yeah.
And sometimes they don't even have a name underneath that. So it's but they put that song "When I Die" on one of their days, which was nice of them. I appreciate it.
I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, as I say, I listened to the album in my car after I dropped my kids to school, and I enjoyed it. But what I found was, I listened to it again earlier before this interview. I said I wanted to listen to it again, but this time I actually listened to it in my quadraphonic headphones, like actually really listening to it, you know what I mean? Really taking it in, as opposed to driving in the car, you're distracted, you're watching the road, you're really listening to it. As I say, I really started to appreciate it a lot more. I mean, I would hate to misquote like what style of music it is. Not knowing enough about the kind of the genre of music, I would say, is it something onto a kind of a rock bluegrass vibe?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah,
as
why
I say,
not?
I've probably butchered it. There we go.
No. I mean, it's not. You know, when you put these things out, especially digitally, like that is out there now. You know, they ask you to pick genres. You know.
Yeah.
So, you know, blues, country. It's certainly not electro. And
Yeah.
It's not electronic dance music, but
No, definitely not.
but yeah, guitar. You know, it's also singer-songwriter is
folksy in some ways.
Yeah, folksy. All of that is, and again, it's this stupid, like, sort of artsy thing to say, I don't want to be categorized, man, which is bullshit. I mean, I categorize everybody all the time, right? I mean, you know, I don't go into the, you know, when was the last, I always said this back when there were still music stores around, record stores, you know, when people would, like other musician friends of mine or musician-oriented people who said, man, categories is such bullshit. And they are complete, like, music is music, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. You like what you like.
You do. And, you know, I like John Coltrane as much as I do Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, it's all just music. But when was the last time you walked into, well, nobody's walking into record stores these days, but when was the last time, you know, you walked, you just went down, you just randomly picked songs?
Yeah.
You know, you do need some sort of, you know, parameters. So yeah, I guess country, blues, ish.
Definitely rock
guitar.
As well, vibes. Like,
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
the
I
band
really,
is
I really dug it just because
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm a big fan of that kind of singer-songwriter one. I think, again, right, it's something we do very well in Ireland. I think a lot of good Irish musicians are just that. They're singer-songwriter, one person, one guitar. Glenn Hansard, Damien Rice, you know, all these guys are really talented.
Do you know a guy named Niall Connolly?
No, I don't actually, but
you
want to look up.
Yeah, he's played with Glenn. And
really?
Niall Connolly, Niall and I have known each other now for, 05, 06 or something like that. After that. Yeah, no, I guess it was more like 2009, 10 anyway, but a while. And he is a singer-songwriter here and based out of New York, but from Ireland. You know, you just look him up online, and he's got a bunch of albums out, and he used to have an open mic night that I attended quite a lot of. And in the time that I attended that open mic, most of that album, the St. Gevedon album, was written. Yeah, I think there's a little Bob Dylan in those songs, and Tom Waits and Lou Reed. I'm a huge Lou Reed fan. Obviously, I grew up in Manhattan, and you know, he was.
That's funny, actually. I hadn't made the Lou Reed connection, but now that you've said it, that does definitely. And I will say that I think while it can be sometimes uncomfortable to categorize stuff and put it into boxes, I think that sometimes it's a lot easier, I find, for me anyway, to sometimes compare it to other artists or other things. Like, even with the movie, if people are like, what's it like? I find it much easier rather than say it's because I yet again, genre-wise, I don't even know how to describe it, but the easiest way for me to say it is like, it's like Don't Look Now meets The Changeling. You know.
And what's wrong with that? I mean, at some point, you know, you have to do that. I mean, I remember, you know, the younger you are, I think the more you bristle at this because you think, or you're holding on to this illusion that you're unique, you know, or that you've come up with something, which goes back to the naivete thing I was saying. You have to believe that. I mean,
exactly.
I like when I do music, I have actively not learned about music. I don't practice a lot of new chords. I will occasionally try out playing along. I mean, obviously I've gotten better as a guitar player over time. It's just going to happen. But I want to pick up my guitar and play something and go, ooh, I've never heard that before. And then find out like 6 months later, I ripped it off from Oasis or something, you know?
Yeah.
But I can't, if I know too much, and this is the same thing with painting and with acting as well, I don't particularly like, especially in film, I don't particularly like rehearsing. I don't unpack. I went to college, so one of the things you learn in a liberal arts college is how to write, how to write and how to read. So, and you learn that reading Joseph Conrad, not some TV script. So
yes,
I don't want to unpack this script. I'm a very sort of traditional English, I guess, text-based actor. You know, what's on the page is what you're going to get me to interpret. I'm not particularly interested in subtext or what the writer had in mind in some sort of post-structuralist way. It's just, here it is. He's the bad guy, does this, that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you.
And try to keep it as immediate as possible, because usually, you know, that's the thing, is like when you were talking about earlier about time and the amount of takes you can do, et cetera, and all that sort of stuff. I found that you never have enough time to unpack the thing and then pack it back together.
Yes.
You know, if you do have that kind of time, if you do have 3 weeks of rehearsal or a month of, let's talk about the character, let's talk about what happens here, you know, then fine. But you rarely have enough time. And so doing like half-assed rehearsals, I think does more damage than any sort of good.
I agree. One thing that I find difficult sometimes as a director is that actors have such different approaches. Like in that, like, would say on The Parish, one actor would want what you just said. Can we do 20 table reads? Can we do 3 weeks of rehearsals before we start? And then another lead actor is like, I will turn up on the day and you will get what you get and it'll be good. I can promise you it'll be good. And you'll be happy with it, but yeah, and like, but you know, and what's weird is the actor that says that surprisingly gives me confidence, whereas I should be terrified at that idea. I should be like, oh God, I don't want them to do that. But like something about that, whereas the one that's saying they need all the rehearsal is the one that has me more panicked, because I'm going, but like, do you not think you can get this? Like, do you?
Well, like, you know, look, yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, everybody's process is their own. The only problem that I have is when someone else's process gets in the way of mine.
Yeah.
You know, that's when things get really difficult, or mine gets in the way of theirs. Although, to be honest, I mean, I'm not locked into one thing really at all. In terms of how I work at home, I don't have a routine with writing. I don't. Maybe I should, but I just don't. And
I've seen a lot of people tell me the whole try to get a certain amount of pages done a day and try to do this. And again, like you, I let it flow out of me when I want it to flow out, or when it feels it wants to burst out of me. I don't set myself a writing regime of like, you need to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I would have written more screenplays maybe I would have the book I'm writing finished by now, but you know, I'm also a bit of a determinist about these sort of things. I don't think we actually have any control over anything that we do. Not to get into that discussion, but I think, you know, you're going to do what you're going to do. And I guess you could, you know, look, if there's a deadline.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very different scenario.
That's another thing altogether. Like I said, I've been around for a minute here. I see no difference in what the wildly successful person, by success I mean monetary success, and fame and whatever power they may have, as you know, to pick and choose the roles they want to do, etc., etc. From what I can gather, all of that's luck. Like, you know, they were in a movie that was a hit. they were touched by that hit. You know, it's like, just because
Yeah.
you're in a hit movie doesn't mean you're going to keep going. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, and then back to something you were saying earlier about the nature of making movies, it, you know, being tough, and what you were talking about being in the edit suite. What I noticed early on was every part of making a movie is the next part is the harder part. Hold on, my cat's butt is in my face. Hold on. Oh, geez,
Shadows. He's trying to appeal to the YouTubers.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. What I meant by that is like, so, you know, you want to make a movie and you think the most insurmountable thing is writing a screenplay. You realize, well, no, that was pretty easy. Getting the money to make the movie, that's the hard part. And then you realize that making the movie is actually pretty fucking hard.
Yeah.
And then you get into the edit suite and you're like, oh my God.
You know,
now I got to put
it.
this thing to, yeah. And then you got to try to sell it to make the money, you know. And then the hardest part is getting people to come see it.
Yeah.
Everything else is easy as pie, as opposed to getting somebody to get off their couch or stay on their couch and dial it up on Netflix.
Yes. But it's as you say, every step of that journey, it does feel like
it's
it gets
harder than the one before.
Than the one before it. And yeah, even I would say that the biggest, for me, what I've started to realize is that the hardest step in some cases is moving on to the next thing, is realizing when to say, okay, that's done, and now I need to just get the next film written, get the next film funded, because sometimes you can get so hung up on, no, we can get a better sales deal, no, we can make the film better, we can, you know.
Oh, sure. That's terrible stuff. A friend of mine said to me once, I'm trying to fail faster.
Yes, exactly.
And again, a way to look at that is not to use the word fail. It's back to what Warhol said, is just do everything.
Yeah.
Just keep doing it, you know, and
keep
don't get hung up on, you're not that, like, I play golf, and a friend of mine, I was on playing one day, and this golf pro happened to be whatever the fuck. This guy was he was the golf pro of the course.
Yeah.
And he was teaching a class, and he took his student with him and shared a couple of holes with me and my buddy, right? Played along with us for 2 or 3 holes. And I was playing particularly bad, which is just par for the course for me. And I was getting
no pun intended.
This was no kidding. Yeah, this was years ago, and the guy said, you know, and I got really angry. I hit some terrible shot, and he looked at me and he goes, you know, Stephen, not good enough to get that angry. And it was a revelation. I have since then, along with yoga and meditation, but it made my round of golf considerably more pleasant. And this dovetails into acting, into the creative process. I still do it. I mean, I still get a little hung up on, I want it to be this way, I want it to be that way, and new ideas are constantly burbling up, let's say in a scene or something. On the other hand, I find with songs, you know, some songs, it's like Tom Waits said, you know, some songs, they just kind of hand themselves to you. Other ones, you got to get in there with a wrench and a tool and a screwdriver, and, you know, pry them out from underneath the car, you know. And it's the same thing with acting. Which sometimes you just got to, you know, it's done, you know. Yeah. And I don't know if you've noticed this. This is classic in acting, and when you're in films, you do a take, it's good, and someone says the worst sentence you can hear on set. Let's get another one for safety. And then all of a sudden, you're 7 takes into this thing that you got on the first take that everybody was happy with.
Yeah.
You good? Yeah, you good with it? Yeah, me too. Everybody's good? Well, let's get one for safety. And then the fucking boom comes into the shot. Or, when you had film, you ran out of film. And now you've redone it 7 times, And
when you had it right out the gate.
Yeah,
you got a hole in one, and then you were still trying to put the ball.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And back to your thing about like directors, being like, so there's the Stanley Kubricks of the world, and then there's the Clint Eastwoods,
Yeah.
Now, you can make an argument that Clint Eastwood and Stanley Kubrick, I think, Clint Eastwood has made some great movies.
Yeah, phenomenal.
And at that point, it becomes a value judgment. Like, I think comparing Clint Eastwood to Stanley Kubrick's like comparing Lobster Bisque to, I don't know, a New York strip. I mean, they're not the same thing. They're both maybe dinner or part of dinner, but it's a ridiculous comparison. But they're completely different directors, right? I mean, if you hear anybody talk about Eastwood, is like, I don't think he says anything to anybody, really.
Yeah. But that's
which is,
one thing that I find is that it takes, when we work with actors, it takes actors a while to get used to me and my DP's process, which is, if we get it, we will move on. Like, we will, if we do a take, and let's say we do a second take and we nail it, we're like, okay, cool, that was absolutely perfect, we've got it. And you get a lot of actors that start going, but are you sure? I really feel like I think I could do one more. Yeah. I think I could. And we have to ease, eventually actors start to realize that, like, oh wait, they would not be calling this and moving on if they weren't happy with what they got. I think it happens sometimes when you're up against it, people start thinking that you're just moving on because of time. But
and sometimes you are, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good or bad.
Yeah, true. It might have been a shot of a teacup or something, and everybody's getting hung up over this shot of a teacup.
Right. I was on a picture like that once. So it was remarkable.
Chaos.
I'm very much a purist about, you're the director, I'm the actor, he's the DP. I'm not going to ask to pick the camera up. Don't have, you know what I'm saying?
I totally get you. I'm curious because I wonder, one of the things that I generally do on my shoots is that I don't generally allow playback. Like, I think
it's great. I think playback is just a fucking waste of time.
That's what I feel. I feel like you're up against it 90% of the time on an independent film shoot anyway. The last thing we need is everybody, no wait, I didn't see it. I'm the guy standing at the back looking over everyone's shoulder. Can we play it again? Because I didn't see. And plus, as I say, if me and the DP say we got it, you have to start building that trust that people start going, well, look, if they got it, I'm like, there's going to be rushes. If you want to sit down on the rushes, go sit down on the rushes,
Well, yeah, I mean, the got it thing, that's about trust, right? And either you trust the director or you don't. I mean, I've been in situations where I didn't, but there's nothing you can do. You're in it. I mean, you're not, you're here, you got to make the best of it, and hopefully it gets fixed in post.
This leads me... Oh, sorry.
No, but just one more thing about
go for
watching playback is, it's sort of like looking, to use an analogy from the art, from painting, watching playback for me, like me walking into an artist's studio with a blank canvas and looking at a palette of colors that artist picked to paint whatever he's going to paint or she's going to paint, and just seeing the colors.
Yes.
So what could I possibly contribute? No, I don't think there should be that much brown. I have no idea what's going on in this guy's head. Now, yes, I've read the script and, so, okay, maybe it's going to be a painting of a pear. But as you well know, as we talked about earlier, just,
because it was a pear on paper, just because it was a pear on paper doesn't mean it's going to end up a pear on the canvas.
Is it a pear by Brock, or is it a pear by Monet, or is it a pear by Jeff Koons? They're very different looking. You know? I mean, I was in a picture once. Well, I mean, every movie, you know, can be cheesy or funny or dramatic or horrific, you know, and but it's the same script. It's, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
it could be anything. Yeah.
yeah.
It's like those people that cut those trailers where they make like a horror film into
well,
comedy.
that's exactly what it is. Yeah. The great, you know, there was a great tagline. What they also did that with taglines, right, of movies.
Yeah.
The one that I loved the best was Star Wars. Religious zealots commit mass genocide.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, oh, kind of ruined the whole movie for me. I'm like, oh yeah.
Are we the bad guys?
I guess. Oh crap! And a friend of mine who's a comedian, he used to do a bit about Star Wars. He's like, I always wanted to be part of the Empire. I mean, everything was clean. Looked like everybody had a job.
Yeah.
They weren't all dirty and living in caves. You know, I mean,
there was no unemployment in the Empire. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, what's wrong with being the Empire? Like, I don't. Anyway.
But I'm going to let people know. So if this is the part now where if you just came here to see us talk about Red Dead, you probably clicked the link in the description that says, you know, Josiah Trelawny discussion. We are here. We're going to start talking about Red Dead now.
Josiah Trelawny.
The very same.
Well, I thought you'd gone to New York.
And miss all this glamour. You must be joking.
How are you?
Well, quite well indeed. I went to Blackwater looking for you gentlemen. You're not very popular there, it seems. Ah! Javier and Charles. I've missed you. And Bill looking as well as can be. Gentlemen, always a pleasure.
I hope people did stick around for a lot of it because I think there's a lot, especially my actor friends. I really hope they watch this. But look, you were talking about directors, and the first thing I'd love to ask you about Red Dead and your experience as Josiah Trelawny, before we get into other stuff, is did you work with? I presume you worked with Rod Edge on this, on Red Dead.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I mean, what was Rod like to work with?
Oh, Rod was, well, there was Rod, and there was, well, ultimately there were like 3 other people, but I guess Rod was the main guy. He was great. I mean, the thing about Rod is great. See, I like that kind of a director where there's not a lot of fluff, and he's just very sort of, this is what we're doing.
Cool.
You know, This is what we need. This is how it's going to go. You're going to be here. You're going to be there. And again, I mean, I'm not particularly locked into one process. You know, so if he were more sort of a talky kind of arm around the shoulder, let's get into the character here, then we would do that. I guess I lean more towards less of that. You know, I'm happier with, oh, he knows what he wants, and so we're going to do this. Okay, great. I don't recall ever having any, what's the word? I think he respected me and I respected him. So I think, you know, and fine job there.
Was the situation then, because I've heard from one or two of the other cast members that like you just got your script like practically on the day, as opposed to getting it, you know, like weeks in advance and figuring things out, and it was turn up, figure it out in the moment, and that must have been for you kind of right in your wheelhouse from everything we've discussed, like that, you know, that kind of immediacy to it must have really suited the type of performer that you were.
Well, it's not like I don't want the script ahead of time, but like it really is it's really dependent upon how much time we have, you know. So like, for example, with Red Dead, you'd get it the night before, or the day, the day before. So you really had time to read it, if you were like a really good at memorization, which I'm not great, but I'm okay. I'm not like one of those guys that can just, read it and have it memorized. So that was that process. If they'd given me the script a week, or let's call it 3 days before, I still wouldn't have looked at it much more. I mean, that's not true. I would have looked at it, but I wouldn't have. It wouldn't have made much of a difference.
Wouldn't have gained much more from it.
Well, not really, because you have some more time to get familiar with the dialogue, but you're not really getting underneath the hood. And frankly, the way that thing is put together, Trelawny changed over the course of those, however it was, 7 years.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, at least for my character. I don't know how it was with the other guys and girls whose characters seem are bigger, frankly. But I got the sense that Trelawny started as one thing and then turned as they were making the picture, as they were making the game. But I could be wrong about that, because again, they didn't let me in on anything. The guys in Scotland didn't. And again, the NDA that you sign and how they get about that, there'd be conversations among actors trying to figure out what was going on, and I just walk away, because I figured, the less I know, the less I can by mistake say. So I didn't want to know anything.
That's the best approach. I mean, Steve's was ridiculous. Like, Steve was telling me when Steve got Red Dead 2, I was like, "What are you up to?" And he's like, "I'm on a cable show in Vancouver." And then, as Rob Wiedoff pointed out, he then had to live in that lie for years, and people are like, "Where's the cable show in Vancouver? When's that coming out, Steve?" And he had to keep adding to the lie and coming up with.
Oh, that's funny. Steve did that. See, I didn't do that at all. I just didn't say anything about anything.
Yeah, that's what Rob did as well. Rob didn't say anything to anyone.
This is not the fucking NSA, So, but on the other hand, I didn't want to get fired. I was having a good time. And and after 5 or 6 years, you really get to be I wasn't there a lot. I was there tops, I think one time I was there for about 2 weeks, and then another few times 1 week or 3 or 4 days, and then a day here and a day there. But geez, you know how it is. I mean, but one of the nice things about making that and making movies and TV shows is the camaraderie that comes, with being in a business that no one is happy about that you're in. And so I got to know these guys and the people behind the scenes as well. So that was that was a lot of fun. It was nice, and I didn't want to screw that up. So
one quick question that I have is with Trelawny. I'm going to go ahead and presume no, I'm not. I'm going to ask you rather than make presumptions. With the accent that Trelawny has, was that a decision on your part, or was that a direction that was given to you?
It was a direction in the audition. I
love Trelawny's old worldly, British accent.
Well, right. Well, when I auditioned for the thing, it came with, Specs, the character, and he was supposed to be like a trickster, I think, was one of the adjectives used, or magician, trickster, something like that.
Conjurer, I think.
Yeah, something like that. And they wanted some flourish to it, I believe. Now, I had no idea what I was auditioning for. Right, obviously, because of the secret. So, so I just came up with this thing I did in the audition. They had some dialogue, right? So I just came up with whatever I came up with in the audition, and then I got it. I got the part, and I still don't know what the hell I'm doing. Right?
Yeah, of course.
So I go out to the thing, and there's Rod, and I knew Rod because I'd worked with Rockstar before. I'd done a character. I just done sort of body work for like a mobile phone game they'd had. So like about a year before, you know, I'm not in. It's not my voice. It's not my face. It's just I was just a guy in
capture.
a suit. Yeah. Right. And so I knew Rod, and I knew some of the other folks there. So, oh, so we're doing this. Are we doing the same thing? And literally, I thought I was going to be there for a day, and maybe two, you know. And then I realized, oh, it's going to, you know. And they don't tell you really anything either. So, but he indicated it was going to be more than like a day or two. But then and so anyway, we're on set, and I'm doing my thing. And he goes, no, you did something in the audition. And I sort of did it straight, I think, on set. And then he said, no, you were like more flourishy. And he did this sort of like that kind of a move, you know, like
a magician.
That was Rod.
Yeah. Pretty as a picture indeed. But, oh my Lord. Oh my Lord. What's in your book? Ladies?
Yeah. And I went, oh, you want that guy? And he goes, yeah, something like that. And so now mind you, you know, Rod's English.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of people. Michael Tempest is English. There's another guy whose name escapes me. Sorry. Also English. There's like 4 or 5 English. There's like a whole cadre of English people. And so I wasn't about to do a serious English accent, or attempt a serious, like a real, you know, like a believable English accent in front of all these English people. So instead I came up with what I came up with, which was like almost a cartoon, like a cheesy, you know, like if you're in like somewhere in Florida and you're at the ye olde Irish Inn, you know.
Yes.
That's kind of the version of that accent. And I still don't 6 years in, and the accent would change all the time too, because I forget what I was doing. So 6 months would go by and they'd have to do like, we did a replay. I was like, oh, that's what he sounds like, right? Yeah, right. And then there was this one line that I could always go back to, really, that got me close to what I'd been doing, which was the way Trelawny says Arthur's name, Arthur, you know, that sort of thing.
Yes, yeah.
Where it's like, it's needlessly pompous. It's. I mean, I don't know if you ever
Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, come to think of it, I don't know when you need to be pompous, but I mean, it's overarching and just.
It's sorry, it's kind of fake, and what makes it work
fake. Yeah.
What makes it work so well is that this character is a conman. He's you know, and so like the accent feels like part of that character. It feels like he is doing his best old worldly British accent in the game.
Yes. Right. And I was actually, there was a moment in the game, right? I believe where hear him talking with his family, his kid, with his wife and his kids.
Yes.
I think you don't see it. I think you just hear it.
Yeah.
And I had lobbied to whoever it was, Rod, I guess, when we were doing that. I said, you know what would be great is if we do this whole thing and I just talk like this. And we realized that this whole thing was an act, you know, that this is not who he is. But they didn't go for it. But and that's the other thing too about that. I mean, speaking of like directors and well, Rockstar has an idea of what they want to do. That's not to say, like I said, that Trelawny, I get the sense that Trelawny, what they wanted to do with Trelawny and what wound up happening with Trelawny was very different. But again, I have no idea what what those two things, what the first thing was, right? But I do know that whatever they decide to do, that's what they're doing. And at least there wasn't a lot of input from me at all, other than that voice. And, you know, Rod wanted him to be more flourishy and bigger, you know, sort of movements and stuff like that. Like a little, you know, magician-y type thing, and different than everybody else. And I noticed that when I started doing the voiceover stuff, redoing the dialogue, that some of which needed to be redone. I would watch the game, and I remember saying to somebody, geez, this is a pretty dark game, you know? And I guess I'm sort of the comic relief. And they're like, yeah, sort of, you know, it's
your touch of that. One thing that I find interesting is that Trelawny is kind of seen as he's a bit more flamboyant and a bit more fun. Him and Sean are the bit of life in the camp where a lot of people are very serious and very dour, because it's a very serious and dour time and situation. But the end of Trelawney's story, without getting into too many spoilers, what I do like about it is it carries a lot of weight and a lot of gravitas, I think, compared to the rest of like, I feel like Arthur, the way Arthur speaks to Trelawny in those scenes is it's actually a change from the entire dynamic that those two characters have had for the rest of the game.
I'll miss you, Arthur. You've been a fine friend to me.
No, let's not get over sentimental. Oh, the place is quiet. Get out of here. Go with my blessing.
Thank you, Arthur.
But one thing that I find interesting is as well that there's a character in the first Red Dead that seems very like Trelawny, but obviously it wasn't your VO and stuff. So it's like retroactively people are trying to link these characters together. Right. There's a character called the Strange Man in the first game who has...
like I said, I have these... Yeah, I've read a little bit of... seen a little bit about that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to keep you much longer because I know we've gone on very long. But just what has it been like being part of the fandom and everything of Red Dead? And
well, when we started this with Oz, it's good that we're ending it with this. They're really, that Oz was the first time I had any sort of taste of. I hesitate to call it fame. It's just people recognized me on the street.
Yeah.
From work that I'd done. So it wasn't just all like industry folks, because I'd done a few other things prior to that, but the only people that really knew about it were industry people.
Yeah.
And this by far is the biggest thing I've ever done in terms of recognition. Although no one recognizes me on the street, because in Red Dead Redemption, for some reason they decided to make, and I'm not complaining, mind you, he's a very attractive man, but I think I look like Jake Gyllenhaal more than me. But like I said, good-looking fella. I've worked I've worked with his sister Maggie on the Deuce. So
yes, yeah.
I don't. There's nothing wrong with that. But people don't recognize me off the thing. But the fandom, like I said, what was nice about going to the Comic Cons in London and then the one in Indiana, in Indianapolis. Look, I don't know. I'm not jaded because I haven't done it a lot. But there were times when people would come up, kids, 17 years old, people who were like, 16, 17 years old. And I don't care how old you are, that's a kid.
Yeah.
Right? And some adults as well, but they were, they would come up and they were literally just vibrating with
excitement.
Yes. And then there was this one girl who had brought me something. She'd done some art, and she couldn't get the words out. Like, oh my God, you're just the guy. You're just that whole thing. And I could see over her shoulder her dad, who had brought her to the thing, that because she was a kid. She's 16, 17 years old or something. And he was so happy for her. Yeah. And, you know, being a father myself now, I think I appreciate it. I don't know if I would have appreciated it as much if I didn't have a child of my own. But I get choked up even, you know, I've told that story. And if to be able, and this is, again, why what I said earlier about doing things and hoping people like it, because it makes life better for everybody. Yeah. The fact that I could impart in that girl's life in that moment, let alone all the time she spent with the game and with the character, that much joy, I don't know, you got to be a particularly big prick not to buy into that 100%, you know, and I buy into it 100%. And it's, look, I've not played the game, partly because I simply just don't have the time, you know. It's
totally understandable.
I had, last time I got into a game like this, it was 12 years ago when the big games, it was a massive multiplayer online game, which seems to be considerably smaller than this game is. Now. Yes. It has to be, right? Just the nature of technology. And I mean, I got 3 screenplays I'm doing. I'm writing another one. I've got a kid, and who I'd rather spend time. I mean, maybe one day me and her will play this game together. I could see doing that, but sure. I mean, the fandom and you know the stuff online. And again, I'm just on Instagram, so that's all I get. You know.
The one thing I'll say to kind of start closing this out to you is that the thing about this series, I mean, I'm a fan. Like, I feel very privileged to be getting the chance to talk to people like you and Rob Wheathoff and Steve.
Sure.
Because I'm a fan first, and this is all secondary. But the thing is, I think, what you guys do, it's so funny because I understand the technical side of it, the industry side. You turn up on the day, you read the lines, and then you go away. But what you do matters so much to people, you know, who play the game. And it doesn't matter. There's no characters in Red Dead 2 in particular, of any video game that I can think of. There is no video game like Red Dead 2 where every character in that game mattered. Like that gang, the Outlaws, you walked around and you wanted to hear every little story and get every little bit of information because you cared about every person. And so it's a credit to you and everybody involved, I think.
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, all I can say is from the people that I worked with, you know, Roger mostly, almost every time I was working, Roger was there. A couple of days he wasn't, but everybody else I worked with, you know, I can say, like, you know, it was a job, but it was, you know, people. You know what? Maybe I didn't take it as seriously first because I had again, like I said, I thought I was going to be there like 3 days. Mm-hmm. And then, okay, the 3 days are up and I leave. And then I get a call, like, you know, and I'm in a video game. You know, look, I've been a gamer when games were literally pinball machines. I used to go to the Penny Arcade in New York City, which is sadly no longer. But, you know, you could get like, it's one of those places that had skee ball and everything, but it was just pinball machines for a few years. And then I remember Space Invaders invaded. And then Atari came with Asteroids. And then so I'm doing that. I'm playing Atari on my box at home. Like I said, I played, the last big games I was into were like Splinter Cell, Halo. There was this big MMO. There was this big game by Baldur's Gate, which were played a shit ton of that. So I love gaming and I love the world, and I used to be in the world much more so than I am now. But again, I didn't take it all that seriously. And then like 2 months in, or 3 months in, 4 months in, and I'm coming back and the character is clearly getting bigger. I'm like, oh shit. This is turning into something. And now, fortunately, the great thing about these video games is that you can do stuff again. And in fact, there were a number of things that I was in that we did again live in the room, and then again, in playback. You know how it goes. It's very piecemeal. So I got a chance to put in a performance that I'm actually proud of, because I'll be honest, I was there for the first 3 days. I'm like, all right, well, this is fun. I learned what motion capture is, and I can put that on the resume, and I'll see ya, and then 7 years later, you're in this thing, and then again, I don't know if this was the case when in the late 90s, when Myst was out, or Diablo. I don't know if this sort of emotion was generated by those games. Maybe there was. I mean, I was older then, right? So I'm like at 28, 29 in the late 90s, and I'm playing these games, and you're at a little bit of a remove, So maybe if I was 16,
I'll put it to you this way: that I grew up in that era. Like I was 14, and first, Resident Evil came out, and I loved it.
Oh, right, yeah. That was a good game. Yeah.
Final Fantasy and all this stuff. That was, and I love Final Fantasy 7. I have a tattoo of it on my back. It's one of my favorite games of all time. All my tattoos are more or less video games. BioShock and Mario.
I loved BioShock.
Oh, yeah, I have a lot of BioShock tattoos.
Oh, cool.
I love BioShock. Yeah. But I mean, back in the 90s and even into the mid 2000s, I don't think you were getting storytelling. I think BioShock may be one of the first ones that really came along and did storytelling at a level where people went, oh shit, video games can be a lot more mature. They can be a lot more not just mature in that they're violent and gory, and they can actually tell a mature story. And I mean, I think the evolution from 2007 with BioShock to 2018 with Red Dead Redemption 2 was astronomical, because the storytelling is so broad. As I say, you're not just talking about a protagonist, antagonist, and some monsters. You're talking about a world of characters that you actually give a shit about. You actually care what happens to every one of them,
Right, right. Well, that's great. I mean, and again, I'm happy to be a part of that, because, like I said, you do this. It's a job, and it's a business. But you also do it. You hope. Certainly as an actor, you hope to be part of things that people like and resonate,
Absolutely.
And I think, art is, that's what art is. That's where its function is making that 16-year-old girl as happy as she was. Well, if you can do that, then why not do that all the time? And why not try to do that all the time? And I think, unfortunately, in the United States, but I think in the West, more in the United States, but everywhere now, I think art, it's the dichotomy that art is something else other than, and that happened a while back, and then it became devalued.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree.
And ironically, I think it with the acting world, the worst thing that happened to actors is when they started calling themselves artists. Is when they were just in a troupe going from theater to theater. I mean, of course, that doesn't happen. Forgetting about COVID, I'm just saying it's film and TV and all that have taken over, but. When that bourgeois notion of artistry crept in, it became less immediate and part of the firmament of life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when that happened, you have a whole bunch of people devaluing
the art,
the need for it. And I think one thing that's happened in the last 6-7 months is clearly there's a need for art and music.
The value of it has been proven once again.
Yes, and in a very practical, real way, not in some sort of highfalutin intelligentsia, Ivy League, critical theory, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
None of that. It's a real visceral need, just like a Coca-Cola and whatever else is, So again, it's great to be a part of something like that. And again, I had no idea. I don't think anybody had an idea. Well, I don't know. I think they expected it to be a big game, but I don't think they expected it to turn into what it turned into.
Yeah,
I certainly. I was no fucking clue.
That seems like a great place
good way to end.
potentially finish up. I had no fucking clue.
Yeah. Which is no, that's a
I love it.
It's a theme that's been running through my life. Yeah.
I will just say, guys, that there will be links in the description to check out Stephen's Instagram, but also to check out his music and to buy his music, which I strongly recommend. And guys, I want to thank Stephen so much because I've kept him so long, which was not my intention.
Yeah, my daughter looked in about 20 minutes ago and she was like, what's going on?
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
I've enjoyed the discussion so much. I apologize.
It's okay. It's all right. No problem. No problem.
But guys,
yeah, this has been great. This has been great.
Thank you so much again. Guys, thank you as well for watching, and if you like what you saw here, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button that's over there below Stephen, and stick around for all that we got coming. And yeah, as I say at the end of every episode, guys, let's survive together and peace out.
Cheers.